car that Lee Iacocca says is critical to Chrysler?
Yes, it is, Leslie.
Where is this car made?
This car is made in right outside of Toronto in Canada.
This car's made in Canada?
Yes, made in Canada.
This is the great hope of Chrysler?
Yes.
A Canadian-made car?
Yes.
And Lee Iacocca says America, and we have to have American cars, and it's made in Canada?
Yes.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Wally Safer.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Steve Croft.
I'm Leslie Stahl. Those stories and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes. "50 years ago, the Japanese dropped bombs on American sailors in Hawaii. Last week, they dropped one on American workers in Detroit. That's when their Prime Minister, Kiichi Miyazawa, said Americans lack a work ethic. These are fighting words if ever we heard any. The last time we tangled with the Japanese, our fighting words were remember Pearl Harbor. This time, they're buy American. Trouble is, you can't always be sure you're buying American or Japanese American or even Canadian American, which hasn't yet caused much of a problem, except maybe for the car salesman we ran into at the Detroit Auto Show. Tell us about the Intrepid. Isn't this the car that Lee Iacocca says is critical to Chrysler?
Yes, it is, Leslie. It's a car that we feel very strongly that will do very well. We've researched it. It's done very well. It's been the star of this show.
Serious question. Where is this car made?
This car is made in right outside of Toronto in Canada.
This car's made in Canada?
Yes, made in Canada.
This is the great hope of Chrysler?
Yes.
A Canadian-made car?
Yes.
And Lee Iacocca says America, and we have to have American cars? And it's made in Canada?
Yes.
All around the auto show, we found more cars like that new Chrysler that are perfect examples of just how confusing the car business has become.
What if I told you Mitsubishi made it?
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
Mitsubishi.
I wouldn't buy it.
You wouldn't buy it?
No, you buy a car, it's made over here.
That should make Lee Iacocca feel good, right? Well, the problem is the car that man wouldn't buy is made over here by American Union Auto Workers in Bloomington, Illinois, and it's sold by Lee Iacocca's Chrysler. On the assembly line at the Mitsubishi factory in Illinois, the first car might be a Mitsubishi Eclipse, the next one an Eagle Talon, the next one a Plymouth Laser. The cars are virtually identical. They just put a Japanese name on one and an American name on the next. What's happening there is happening all over. All the major Japanese companies are making cars here.
Now the Sentra, four-door car, Japanese car?
Yes, but it's made here in Smyrna, Tennessee.
And all the U.S. automakers are selling cars made somewhere else.
Well, I want to talk about this blue car over here. What is that?
That's
what?
totally Japanese.
Totally Japanese. So why do they say it's a GM car?
Because they paid for it.
How common is that? American automakers importing totally Japanese-made cars, then selling them with an American name.
A lot more common than is being told by the U.S. auto executives.
Richard Rakia runs Mitsubishi Motors in the U.S. He's one of those Japanese that Lee Iacocca's been complaining about. Actually, he's a Detroit native, and he worked for Chrysler for 15 years.
Last year, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler combined sold almost 510,000 of those cars that they either imported from Japan or had built at U.S. assembly plants by Japanese companies. That's more than almost as many cars as Mazda and Mitsubishi sold combined in the United States.
Well, if the American auto dealer companies are selling Japanese-made cars, or Japanese cars made in the United States, and making a profit, why are they complaining so much?
I don't know. I guess if they're going to complain about some, or request some reduction, they ought to be the first in line to give it the office.
Well, don't tell me it's not confusing to consumers, because it's just plain confusing to anybody.
It is, and it's, and I think in some respects it's meant to be. It plays to the Japanese bashing side of the argument.
Rakia says GM, Ford, and Chrysler are just trying to blame their problems on someone else, when they should be owning up to the mistakes they made when big profits were rolling in just a few years ago.
I think it was 1986, they made over $11 billion. And in a 6-year period, they made over $50 billion. I mean, it would have been one thing to make that kind of profit and then reinvest back in your plants and your selling process and your products. But they didn't. It appears that they put most of that money in non-automotive investments. So they lost the golden opportunity.
S&Ls?
Yeah, S&Ls, airplane companies, et cetera. And during that period of time, the Japanese organizations weren't standing still.
What did the U.S. automakers have to say to that? Well, Lee Iacocca wouldn't talk to us, but at the Detroit Car Show, we stumbled upon Harold Red Poling, the chairman and CEO of Ford.
I'm Leslie Stahl with 60 Minutes. Will you talk to us? Yeah, come on. We'll follow you around. Come on, give us a...
At first, he didn't want to talk either. But finally, he agreed to show us some of his cars.
Don't you think that's a very attractive product?
I do. It's very, it looks like the Honda, actually.
High-quality product?
I own a Honda.
Very competitive
It looks
price?
like my car.
No, we like to think the Honda looks like
Well,
another thing Poling's Ford and my Honda have in common, they're both made in the U.S. In fact, fully 40% of the Japanese brand cars sold in the U.S. are now made in the U.S. But Poling says Japan still isn't playing by the rules.
During the decade of the 80s, they had a $473 billion in trade. $473 billion with the rest of the world. 364 with the United States. That's not fair trade.
but isn't the big issue Americans buying American cars? Isn't that really the...
No, the big issue is buying American parts for American cars produced in the United States. That's the big issue.
What's Poling talking about? Well, he and all the other U.S. automakers claim that the Japanese car factories in this country are simply putting together Japanese parts. Take that Nissan Sentra that's made in Tennessee.
What percent is American
Of the parts?
of the parts?
No, it's kind of hard to answer.
I don't have, I would rather be accurate for you.
Yeah.
Who makes the engine?
The engine is built in Japan, Nissan Motor Limited.
The vehicle's assembled in Smyrna, Tennessee.
But it's a Japanese engine.
Correct.
All the Japanese car makers say they're using more and more American parts, but that it takes time to develop reliable suppliers here. Detroit says it's taking too long, and that thousands of Americans are losing their jobs in the meantime. But Detroit can't cry, "Buy American," too loudly on parts. Just visit a garage, as we did, and ask the mechanic.
When you look under the hood of a Japanese car, you're seeing Japanese parts.
Right.
And when you look under the hood of an American car, you're seeing American parts.
No.
No?
No.
What do you mean, no?
We have Fords with Mazda motors in them, Chevys with Toyota motors in them, Chryslers with Mitsubishi motors in them. Doesn't make sense. I mean, Iacocca's up there saying we want this and that, but he's putting Mitsubishi motors in his products. I don't understand.
To some degree, when U.S. automakers bash Japan, they're bashing themselves, because each one owns part of a Japanese competitor. GM owns part of Isuzu. Ford owns part of Mazda. Chrysler owns part of Mitsubishi. But Detroit hasn't spent much time publicizing that.
Are you being made to feel personally unpatriotic by running a Japanese company in this country?
I was in Detroit during the auto show, too, and I wouldn't go jogging with my Mitsubishi sweatshirt on at that particular time. But I think that there's a tendency to look at people who work for Japanese-owned companies in America as less American than other companies. And I think that's unfortunate.
All the Japanese car companies are working hard to overcome the perception that they're un-American, pushing statistics on how many thousands of jobs they've created here, even featuring their American workers in TV commercials.
Introducing the men and women of Toyota Motor Manufacturing in Georgetown, Kentucky. They just couldn't leave well enough alone.
The U.S. automakers, on the other hand, have a different perception problem. No matter where their cars are made, no matter who makes the parts, no matter how many times they urge people to buy American, many consumers just believe Japanese brand cars are better. Period.
For years now, Detroit has been telling the American people that the cars are much better, the quality's there. And so far, the public hasn't bought it.
I know.
Why?
Because the press writes that it's not true. And that's a
You
misperception.
can't blame the press for that. You sound like the president when his poll ratings go down.
Let me ask you a question. Where are the Japanese cars priced versus the American products? Are they under or over? Come on, quick. You ought to have a positive...
Well, I think actually, I know because I've been here, but if before I got here, I would have said that a Japanese car is less.
That's right.
I know, it's a perception.
It's a perception.
You're absolutely right.
Well, why don't you help correct it?
But isn't quality the main thing? People don't think your cars are as good. It may not be fair, but...
Sure, that's an issue, and that was true back in the early 80s. It's not true today.
Even the Japanese agree that American quality is better. But that battle of perceptions is still being waged at the Detroit Car Show and in auto showrooms all over the country. Just listen to these two salesmen, two Americans, who make their money selling both American Chevys and Japanese Geos.
We can't let this automobile business slide away from us like we've let television and all the rest of them. This is the last bastion we have, and we're going to keep it.
Matt's shaking his head.
I mean, it's protectionism. It's not what you buy what's good product. Whoever builds the best thing, I'm going to pay my money for it.
I don't agree with that.
I don't have to buy something because American makes it. If American makes a good product, I buy it. But if they don't, I buy what's good for my money. I don't have to spend money because it's American. I buy it because it's a good product. That's the only thing you should have to be worried about. You make your own money, you buy what's best. Why do you buy something inferior?
I don't buy anything inferior. I think we got the best product there is, period. I wouldn't be selling the car if I didn't think it was a better car.
But did you think that a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I've always felt that way. Maybe I'm a loyal American, maybe I'm screwy, but that's my philosophy. I believe buying American. I'm an American. I fought for this country. I've seen the dangers that are inherent in what they've got now. They're trying to take this business away from them. I think enough is enough.
Maybe so. But if you decide to take Lee Iacocca's advice and buy American, remember, it's not always as simple as it sounds.
But how can the chairman of your company be going to Japan and going on television saying you have to buy American, and then he's having his best hope made in Canada?
He's not necessarily going against the Japanese, but he's saying just make it fair. And I think that's, the fact that this is a U.S.-built car or a Canadian-built car, I don't think that's in the issue.
You wish it weren't the issue.
A postscript. It's not just in Detroit that they're refighting World War II. In London, they're hunkering down for a new battle of Britain. At least the British auto industry is. They're up in arms because Princess Di just traded in her Jaguar for a German Mercedes. Maybe nobody told them that even a Jaguar is no longer the British icon it once was. Today, the company is owned by Ford.